Welcome to America in Focus. I'm JD Davidson. Over the weekend, the shooting of the Minnesota former House Speaker and a state senator captivated the nation. Joining me today is John Stife, a reporter for the Center Square, who helped cover the incidents as they unfolded over a 3 or 4 day span. John, tell us a little bit about where we stand right now.
Vance Boelter is in federal custody. He has both state and federal charges ranging from murder to stalking. And essentially what's going to occur is he's going to face these federal charges first. So the state murder charges will be delayed till later, and the federal counts may be increased as they go more through the case. But they charged, as the U.S. attorney said, what they could right now. And it's going to be a long process of going through all the evidence, all of the writings that he had, all of the information that they collected to kind of determine and be able to prove how much of this was premeditated, which they believe all of it was, and kind of the other things that he went through in order to attack these people and kind of hide his identity while he was doing it in order to continue the killings after the first ones that he's accused of.
One of the interesting parts of this story for me is I'm based in Ohio, but I happened to be in Minneapolis over the weekend. I was 5, 6, 7 miles away from the shooting, learned about it Saturday morning when I woke up, and was able to kind of jump on that, see the reaction in the communities, spend the day in Minneapolis, and watch things unfold. It went from what I saw as kind of a local story that we would go ahead and grab really quickly to an hour and a half later after the initial press conference, a national story. And thankfully, John was there to help pick that up. But the mood in Minneapolis was fascinating. And to see the localized view of what had happened and the suspect, along with what was being portrayed nationally, was almost night and day. It's true. The suspect was appointed to a board in 2019 by Tim Walz, but he's a heavy Republican, big Donald Trump supporter. And from everything we've seen, all of the motive seems to revolve around abortion. Nationally, when you saw comments on stories and other chat groups and things like that, they put a lot of this at the feet of Walz, thinking it was a Walz supporter, when in reality it wasn't. The other thing that was interesting Saturday as the day unfolded, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, is they said there were 20 SWAT cars. They apprehended him late Sunday night. They had 20 SWAT teams looking for him throughout both the Twin Cities. I spent the day covering both of the Twin Cities just because I was there for personal reasons. Never saw a police car, just one, saw one police car the entire day. But it was in some areas of the city it was all people were talking about. In some areas of the cities that we were in, nobody was talking. You would never know anything happened. Talk a little bit about the apprehension, the day and a half hunt for him and his wife, and then what eventually led to his capture.
Well, it was wild because police actually saw him and met him kind of at a lawmaker's house before the shooting and killing of the last two people. A police officer drove past him, saw him in a car with his license plate that from items he purchased at Fleet Farm that literally just said police on the back. He just looked straight forward. He had the silicone mask on. And the one police officer who went to that lawmaker's house just went to the house, checked on her, waited for backup. And by the time that came, he was gone. So then they found him at another house when he was killing the Hoffmans, and allegedly he's been accused of killing the Hoffmans. And then, he escaped out the back door. And the problem then for him is he's on foot. So what happened was he found a guy at a bus stop in a downtown area and purchased a Buick and an electric bike from the guy. He first offered to purchase the electric bike, and then the guy gave him a ride to his house and sold him the Buick too. So he was able to leave the area and get closer to where his home was in Green Isle. And what ended up being the key to them finding him was they received a tip of a guy on an electric bike that looked like Boelter, because photos had been distributed, photos from him wearing a cowboy hat when he went to the bank to get the money he emptied out his account in order to purchase the Buick and the electric bike. And there were a couple other photos, including one with the mask. So then they were able to kind of figure out what several mile area, and it's remote. It was a wooded area. And so
an hour southwest of Minneapolis, I believe.
Yeah. And so they found the Buick there, and knowing that they had already talked to the person that had sold them those items, after figuring that out, they used like a robot and drone to go check that the Buick wasn't booby trapped. And then they looked inside, and there was a note from him inside about it. And ultimately they were able to corner him, and they were using drones. All these SWAT teams were there, and he crawled out eventually to police, and they were able to apprehend him alive, to face these charges late Sunday night. But it was a very, I guess, controlled search for him, because he wasn't necessarily a danger to the general public. They didn't know that, but these were very targeted killings that he had researched for a long time. And he had notes about addresses of these politicians, and it wasn't just politicians from the state of Minnesota. It was also some from Wisconsin, some from Illinois, other areas.
And those writings found in the Buick, and also I believe in what he was driving when he allegedly committed the crimes,
and in the house where he was staying with a roommate that wasn't where his family was at.
Right. And those writings were police originally, in the very first press conference Saturday morning, termed it a manifesto. But I think we're learning now it's more just kind of notes and writings and things like that. But I think that's what pushed it nationally, because I know in Ohio, security around lawmakers and at the state house has been increased. In Wisconsin, also, security has been increased. And like you said, it wasn't just Minnesota. It was, I think it's safe to say that the majority of the names were probably Minnesotans. But it stretched for lack of a better term, the hit list stretched across several states.
Right. And the U.S. attorney was clear that it's not just one list. It's a series of essentially notepads that he wrote information on, and there were names here and there. So right away they said, there were 75 names. And then later on they said, okay, there's 45 Minnesota lawmakers who were named, and they were working outside of that to kind of figure out things. But it's not like he had a list, like here's a prioritized list of people. It was just like, here's research on this person, here's some on that. And it was about where they live, where he could search for them, what their family members were. And hence the stalking charges. The lawmakers that he ultimately is accused of attacking first were ones that he had the most research on. And a couple of lawmakers ended up fortunate. One of them that he went to their home was out of town. Another, like mentioned earlier, the police happened to show up, and he was scared off before he went to the door. And she ended up making a statement about that and how her life was saved because that officer showed up when she did.
Well, what we've talked about today is just the beginning. This is a story that's going to stretch weeks and months and most likely years before there's a finalized. John, thanks for joining us today. And we'll have much more at the Center Square as this story develops.